Hello, I'm Elizabeth Chadwick, and this is my recently published novel, Lady of the English. It tells the story of Empress Matilda and her young stepmother Adeliza of Louvain. I want to talk a bit about the background to the novel, and also about Matilda herself and Adeliza, so come with me. On November 20th, 1120, King Henry I of England and Duke of Normandy was at Barfleur preparing to return to England. He was middle-aged but still looking to the future. His eldest son William was in his late teens and being groomed to eventually succeed him. Henry's daughter Matilda, also in her late teens, was Empress of Germany. Henry was a widower, but he was preparing to marry again to Adeliza of Louvain, a girl younger than his daughter. Adeliza was accounted beautiful and pious, and Henry was hopeful of begetting more legitimate heirs beyond the two he already had. He had a reputation for liking the ladies, and had fathered at least a score of bastards on various women. But on that cold winter's night in Normandy, everything was to change. Henry set sail with the older court members, leaving the youngsters, including his son and several of his illegitimate offspring, to their carousing. It was the last Henry ever saw of them. Their ship foundered on a rock in Barfleur harbour and sank. Henry's whole game plan had to change, because now the only legitimate heir he had was his daughter Matilda in Germany. He went ahead with his marriage, but it became obvious that Adeliza was not going to bear him a child. Young and beautiful though she was, her womb seemed barren. Henry began to cast around for a successor, and his gaze fell upon his nephew Stephen, son of his sister Adela. Stephen had been raised at the court with the tragic young prince, and had only been saved from drowning himself because he was suffering from a stomach upset and preferred not to embark on the fated vessel. Henry married Stephen to Matilda Boulogne, who was kin on her mother's side to the old royal Saxon house of England, thus giving Stephen a good claim to the crown. In 1125 the Emperor of Germany died, leaving Henry's daughter Matilda a widow. Suddenly there was a new player in the game. Henry summoned Matilda home, and had his barons swear to her as their future sovereign. This did not sit well with many of them, but Henry was so strong a king, and ruled with such charisma and iron, that no one dared oppose him. However, he did not cast Stephen off entirely, as I have him say in Lady of the English, "A prudent man keeps more than one horse in the stable, but there is always one he prefers to ride." And that is exactly how I believe Henry felt. He could play one off against the other. I also think he was hoping to live forever. Externally he might have prepared to meet his own mortality, but internally he had no intention of giving up his fistfuls of power. Henry married Matilda to Geoffrey, the 14-year-old heir to Anjou. At this time Matilda was in her mid to late 20s. Although the marriage produced 3 sons, Henry, Geoffrey, and William, it does not appear to have been a harmonious one, and the couple split for 18 months before any of the children were even born. What Matilda must have thought about marrying an adolescent youth, the mere son of a count, when she had previously been Empress of Germany, is very interesting for a novelist to speculate upon. When Henry did eventually die, the Blois faction were well placed to seize the throne. Stephen was at Wissant, which was a short sea journey from England, and his brother Henry was at Winchester and in control of the royal treasury. Matilda, on the other hand, was in Anjou with her husband and sons, and newly pregnant again. No one came galloping to offer her the crown. Instead, it was all stitched up by the Blois faction, abetted by the reluctance of barons to accept a woman on the throne when they could have a man. Nevertheless, they had sworn their allegiance to Matilda, and Matilda had not only her own right to fight for, but that of her small son Henry, and fight she did, to the great cost of the lands involved, the people, and herself. Adeliza helped her in that fight. Indeed, Adeliza was immensely important to Matilda. After Henry died, she married William d'Albini, a young baron who was a staunch supporter of Stephen. But despite her loyalty to her husband, Adeliza was determined to do what she felt was right by old obligations and ties. When Matilda came to England to fight her corner, it was Adeliza who gave her a safe landfall. That must have taken a lot of guts on Adeliza's behalf, and must also have indicated how strong the relationship was between the women. Somehow Adeliza persuaded her husband to allow the Empress to land at Arundel. Adeliza's contribution to the future reign of Henry II should not be overlooked. If you'll pardon the pun, she was a kingpin. The relationship between her and the Empress Matilda was probably the most important woman-to-woman one of Matilda's adult life. When Matilda returned to her father's court following the death of her first husband, she would have spent several years in Adeliza's company. When Matilda and her second husband Geoffrey of Anjou split up for 18 months, she and Adeliza again spent time together, and it was Adeliza who allowed Matilda into England to begin her campaign for the English crown. Lady of the English begins the story in 1125, when Matilda is setting out from Germany to return home, and Adeliza is despairing that she will never bear Henry an heir. Both women were titled Lady of the English in their lives, and that's why I chose it for the novel. It was always given to the Queen of England in that period, and although Matilda never gained the crown, she was acknowledged with that tribute. I hope you enjoy reading Lady of the English. For me, it's been a fascinating journey following part of the lives of these two linked but very different women, and observing their struggles to survive and be heard in a world where the odds were stacked against them. Yet each in her own way, and despite setbacks, succeeded in the end, and they have my deepest respect.